Okay. Good afternoon. What day are we on? Is it 5? Yes. It feels like days go by like lightning, right? This has been just an incredible session. So much good, deep, heartfelt, sincere Dharma practice going on. And I thought I would read out, there's a couple of lines from a White Tara sadhana that I've been working on recently, and every time I say them to myself, I think, gosh, that is so good. So I'm going to share them with you. Having developed the mind of enlightenment, so the bodhicitta, that we're practicing for the sake of all beings, to bring all beings to full and complete Buddhahood. And in order to do that, we have to Buddha up, right? That is the mind of enlightenment. Honestly, I can't tell you how critical our whole practice actually turns on that dime. Without that dime, you can get a little funny. You can forget about everybody else. I got mine. There's no room for that here. That is not the highest level practice. The highest level Mahayana practice is for your sake. I'm doing this. Isn't that so beautiful? This is like everyone is a mother. Everyone is a father. This is true parental mind, magnanimous mind. And this particular section goes, having developed the mind of enlightenment, I will receive all beings as my guests. Inner and outer beings. Let me repeat that. Inner and outer beings. So, lovely, lovely. We get to really meet all the inner beings, do we not? Especially in retreat, because here we are saying, I'm just going to sit here and whatever arrives in my mind is my guest. Is welcome. Is nourished by my practice. Is liberated by my practice. There's also a phrase in Zen that goes, liberation upon arising. We say, see it, acknowledge it. Normally we say, let it go. But in this case, with this way of working, you would say, let it be. Let it feast at the table of your practice. Total hospitality. Doesn't that feel good? Doesn't it feel right? And of course, the food that all of these guests in our mind are getting is the food of love, compassion, and wisdom. Especially the wisdom part. Nothing fixed, nothing solid, nothing that we have to guard against or entice into. Everything perfect, complete, and totally welcomed. So immediately, the samsaric mind does a little kind of like, huh? Right? All my angry thoughts, all my selfish thoughts, all my horrific, horrible, traumatic memories, welcome? Isn't that harmful? Aren't those horrible negative thoughts harmful? Shouldn't I be like cutting them out? We don't do anything. The Dharma does the work, right? What we've done is make it possible for the Dharma to do the work. We have presented ourselves as a vessel, a container of the Dharma. Now, on the outside, it's called the retreat. And it's called the schedule. And it's called the guidelines, right? And we all agree to those and try to uphold them so that we can help others practice. We all try to practice with the most sincere heart we can because we know that this inspires the person sitting next to us. And we also know that it inspires ourselves. Now, what about the container of your heart? It's very, very critical that you really appreciate and trust that the container of consciousness that is being woven through your practice, your Dharma practice, is holding the stuff that comes into it from your mind. Now, what strands is that container woven in, right? It's woven in refuge, right? It's woven in precepts. It's woven in bodhicitta. So there you are, sitting on this cushion as this container, so that when the crazy comes around, that normally the samsaric mind goes, I think we got to do something about that. This is warning, Will Robinson, this is a problem. We've got to push this down into the basement. We got to turn the other way. We got to do something. This is not right, right? Because the dualistic mind has so few tools, and it's kind of weak, right? It's very binary. Warning, Will Robinson, warning. But the container of practice is like the chalice, right? That chalice, Arthurian legend, they find the chalice, this very ordinary looking chalice. In this case, it looks like each one of us, right? And this chalice is the philosopher's stone. This is the thing that when all the crazy comes in, it is automatically transformed and liberated. Now, this is really, really good news, right? And the crazy thing is, you don't have to know a thing about it. You won't know a thing about it. You can't know a thing about it. I mean, vaguely, at the end of retreat, a couple of days later, you can say, wow, I really kind of responded to that a little differently. I didn't do my usual, right? Because this chalice is woven out of the DNA of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. So it's actually taking your own DNA and weaving it into the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. It's so far beyond our conscious control. And, quite frankly, that's what makes it a little scary. And that's what makes it somewhat easy to manipulate in the hands of nefarious actors, right? Fortunately, we don't have that issue here. Having developed the mind of enlightenment, I will receive all beings as my guest. Gosh, imagine if you sat all week just with the line, I will receive all beings as my guest. Now, I can tell you, I had a guest arrived because I threw the windows open and I could see Zuize coming down the Zendo, and I knew what was coming. The windows are going to get closed, right? Because there's a protocol that I'm not aware of. Well, my guest that arrived was like, oh, my effing God, here we go again. Total transparency. And I could feel it. I think I even felt my eyes roll a little bit. But I also felt the chalice, right? And it was like, oh, right, settle. We've got this. There's a way to harmonize this moment. This is what practice does. And as bodhisattvas, we make this vow to relieve the suffering of the world. Well, fortunately for us, that suffering just keeps on coming. Whoosh, whoosh, like the waves on the sand, right? Just forget about thinking that it's ever going to stop, because it's not, right? And you don't want it to stop. You've made a vow to relieve the suffering. So, your job depends on some suffering showing up. But of course, the way the suffering shows up is radically different after Kensho. I will say it plain as day. The way the suffering shows up is radically different after Kensho. And that is why it is so important to get that wisdom eye open and functioning. Because if it's not open and it's not functioning, then the samsaric mind is going to just step right into the vacuum. Because something's got to happen. Some kind of response has to be made. And it's almost a little bit like a battle royale, a little bit. It's like samsaric mind over here that knows how to fix it and make it cool and do everything right. And then there's the wisdom eye that really has the true elixir of love and compassion and clarity. And, for a while, they're really battling it out. Who's going to get primacy in your mind? Right? We know this to be true. And Kensho is sort of like, okay, the wisdom eye got primacy in the mind. The wisdom eye is on the top, right? But we still have to take that stick, as Dogen says, and poke everything into the oneness, the one body of the Dharmakaya. So my little temper tantrum over there got poked right into the Dharmakaya, right into workability, right into harmony. The fact that something came up is not a problem. To be expected, right? To be expected. Don't be surprised. What happens with it is a direct result of our training. How we deal with it is a direct result of our training. Interestingly, for those who don't know, I have my grimoire. And this is my book of breaking the spells of samsara. Isn't that fun? So it's also that Rinzin asked me to go through the gateless gate and give talks on the koans in there. So I'm on case 14, antidote 14. Interestingly enough, it really parallels what we were just talking about here. Oh, you know what? Before we start that, let's actually do I want to give you the full paragraph of the guests. Having developed the mind of awakening, I will receive all beings as my guests. I will follow the transcendent ways, and here the ways of wisdom, prajna. May I attain enlightenment for all. So that's basically what we've been talking about. Okay, so here we are, case 14. Nansen kills the cats. The case. Once the monks of the Eastern and Western Zen halls in Master Nansen's temple were quarreling about a cat. Nansen held up the cat and said, "You monks, If one of you can say a word, I will spare the cat. If you can't say anything, I will put it to the sword. No one could answer. So Nansen finally slew it. In the evening, when Joshu returned, Nansen told him what had happened. Joshu thereupon took off his sandals, put them on his head, and walked off. Nansen said, if you had been there, I could have spared the cat. Mumon's commentary. What is the meaning of Joshu's putting his sandals on his head? If you can give a turning word concerning this matter, you will be able to see that Nansen's command was not meaningless. But if you can't, look out. Danger. The verse. Had Joshu been there, he would have given the command instead. Had he snatched away the sword, even Nansen would have begged for his life. So, people kind of don't like this koan because the cat gets killed. It's kind of sad. But it's a little bit like dramatizing the point, isn't it? You know, I was watching some show, Scandal. Isabella got me watching Scandal. Many, many hours of Scandal I probably shouldn't have been spending. But anyway, one of the things that they would do to make a really dramatic point and to shift someone's mind really fast would be like, out of nowhere, they would, the bad person would just like turn around and just shoot somebody randomly, right? And that would really get everybody's attention and totally shift in the narrative. Now, I'm not saying we should be doing that. No. It's only TV, it's make-believe. Just like really, in a sense, perhaps this is a story that was dramatized as well. But I ask you, considering that pretty much we're always having some sort of a discussion in our minds about how we're feeling about things, and pretty much evaluating all the time. Is this okay? Not okay? Okay, not okay. When do we allow that sword of Manjushri to just cut through all of that? Do we allow the sword of Manjushri to cut through that ASAP, right? As soon as possible, right? The weird thing is, you can say, I dedicate myself to like using that sword of wisdom to cut through the crazy arguments in my mind that are not seeing the total, complete, wonderful, lacking nothing Buddha nature arising as this. I commit myself to seeing that. Well, and then the next minute you do a belly flop, right? And the reason why you do the belly flop is you have not gotten really intimate with yourself as this chalice woven of the DNA of all Buddhas throughout space and time, woven of the DNA of love, compassion, wisdom, really felt in real time that had that Kensho experience where the prajna is now on the top. Because things happen in our mind so fast. It's only the opening of the wisdom eye that can catch it that fast. The conscious mind cannot catch it that fast. So, and then you say to me, okay, I've been through a few checking questions on Moo. In fact, I've even had my Kensho verified by you all. And still, what the heck? Well, dear ones, it's called practice. Dido would say famously, I've been practicing for 40, 50 years or whatever, and, I tried it once. I tried to stop sitting and stop practicing. And it started to leak out, right? I couldn't, the level of clarity, I couldn't maintain the level of clarity that I had when I was sitting and practicing all the time. So, the good news / bad news, depending on how you look at it, you have to keep doing it. You're never going to stop, right? For me, the good news is our life will never, ever be boring. You will never get to a point, no matter how senile you get, how much your bones ache, how immobile you get, that you cannot practice the Dharma, that you cannot practice awakening. Personally, this is really great news. I can't really think of anything else that you can carry with you right through to your death and beyond. You monks, if one of you can say a word, I will spare the cat. If you cannot say anything, I will put it to the sword. No one could answer. So, a little bit paralyzed, right? And the truth of the matter is that paralysis is also the Buddha nature arising, right? Let's just go there and establish that fact. But we have a bodhisattva vow to save all beings. So something could have been done, and it wasn't. That too is not separate from our life as a Buddha. Something could have been done. I didn't do it. I was wrong. I messed up. This is also absolutely critical and central to our practice, that we can go there with our eyes wide open. I was called on to do something, and I couldn't. I was paralyzed. I couldn't. I missed the moment. What to do as a bodhisattva when you've missed the moment? What do you do? I can assure you that at the very least, when that cat was cut in two, they stopped arguing. Right. In the evening, when Joshu returned, Nansen told him what happened. Joshu thereupon took off his sandals, put them on his head, and walked off. Nansen said, "If you had been there, I could have spared the cat," which is a really interesting way to say it. If you had been there, I could have spared the cat. Some turning word or gesture was expressed in what Joshu did by putting the sandals on his head. It's not clear how that directly corresponds to saving the cat. Nevertheless, Nansen says it does. There was something in Joshu's gesture that was so full of life, so full of harmony, so full of such an expression of the truth of love and compassion and wisdom integrated, that would have covered not only the entire Zendo, but the entire world without end. And we are invited to make our lives that kind of gesture. Retreat shows us that every moment, every breath is this expression of Buddha nature, is this expression of the fullness and the wholeness that is. And when we just allow the truth of our life to be as it is, not only do we save the cat, we save ourselves, we save each other, we save the past, and we save the future. May it be so. Beings are numberless.
I